Hello, and welcome to my PowerPoint about uncommon jokers in Balatro. There are, a lot of these, so it's going to take a good amount of time. So everyone get your snacks, get water, get comfortable, because we're going to do some of these. Now, I do have to say, I've put a lot of hours in this game over this weekend. I get some people didn't like that I didn't know about I'm not the biggest spare trousers fan in the world. So I went through and specifically tried to use as many of these jokers that I thought were bad as possible, and a lot of them are still actually kind of bad. So yeah, Arrowhead, of course, is the first one we're going to start with. It gives 50 chips when a spade is scored. This is actually pretty powerful, giving 250 chips with 5 spades and a flush. And for the early game, getting any amount of molt really makes this go crazy. It gives the same amount of chips as Stuntman, which, as we know, can really go crazy if you're able to support it in any way. That being said, it's definitely not the greatest, right? Chips don't really scale that well into the late game, especially compared to X molt options. But if you are playing, a spade flush build, this isn't the worst card ever. It also makes it, if you're playing like straights or 3 of a kind, etc., it's a good amount of chips to give because, well, sometimes you're not going to get a full flush from it. So just getting a little bit of value out of it can be really powerful in the early game where, typically you're going to be using this the most. Okay, you know how I just said about all that stuff about bad jokers? There's Acrobats. So Acrobat gives ×3 molt on the last played hand around. You have to do a lot of things to make this work. You have to intentionally give up a lot of your hands and money for this, which, probably isn't the greatest, to get a average, about above average time of X molt compared to a lot of other options. And that's just not that good. Acrobat has another card that's very similar to it in Dusk, but Acrobat's just worse than Dusk because it doesn't scale even remotely as well. And guys, you're getting ×3 molt out of this. If you're playing, if you're playing like 4 hands to get this to work, you probably could have won using those 4 hands to begin with. So Acrobat's kind of one of those jokers that just, if you're trying to get value out of it, you're probably not doing the best you could, because getting value out of it means you have to sacrifice a lot of money in hand. And yeah, it can be there to save you in a pinch, but so can any other joker. You can make the argument that any other joker could save you in a pinch in a situation, but this is yikes. Not the biggest fan of Acrobat. I really think it's one of the bottom tier jokers in this game, and I do not take it. If it's offered to me and I've literally there's times where I'll pick up an Acrobat, sell it. What happens is I've had times where I'll get Acrobat in the first shop from my Buffoon pack, and I'll literally take it because the other thing was Eternal or bad, and I'll take it, I'll sell it, and then just buy something else. It's just, hitting Acrobat early feels terrible, hitting it late feels terrible. I don't know. It just feels like a really bad joker to me. I don't like it at all. Speaking of bad jokers, I'm kidding, but we have Blackboard. Blackboard gives ×3 molt if the only suit in your hand are clubs and spades. See, this is what I was talking about. There are a lot of ways to get ×3 molt, and almost all of them are pretty much as easy to achieve as Acrobat, or easier, and, aren't as bad, right? Blackboard gives ×3 molt in a pretty easy thing to do. You could just play all of your cards that aren't clubs or spades, still get ×3 molt. You could, deck fix and have an entire deck of clubs and spades and get ×3 molt. There's so many ways to make use out of Blackboard, and it's just solid, right? If you are playing, a flush deck with clubs or spades, it's a really good pickup, basically any point in the run. And if you are playing a flush, you only really need to be holding 3 or 4 cards typically, right? So you can pretty easily set it up even without a full deck. Relatively easy. I mean, pretty easy is not necessarily true, right? Because you still do have to have a full flush and then no other cards. So yeah, it's not the easiest, but it can work even before total deck fixing, and it's just strong. You don't have to play a bunch of bullshit hands that lose you money like Acrobat. It's just a solid joker. Astronomer makes it so planets and celestial packs are free in the shop. This is actually an interesting joker because I don't think that it's a joker that you hold for more than 1 or 2 rounds at best, right? The reason for that is you have to consistently be hitting packs and planets in your shop for it to do anything. And if you're just not, then it's completely useless, right? So The best use case scenario for this Joker is you pick it up in the shop, and then there's 2 Celestial packs in the shop, right? Of any size. It costs $8. You can buy it, buy 2 Celestial packs of any size, and then sell the Joker for $4, and it gave you money to do so. That's not terrible. I really wouldn't hold on to this for a long time, though. It's not consistent, right? And a lot of the time when you're playing this game, you want consistency. Consistency typically is what wins you the game in Balatro, and not many, there aren't many ways to consistently make use of it, and that's just not the greatest, in my opinion. Bull and Bootstrap. So Bull gives you 2 chips for every $1 you have. Bootstrap gives you 2 molt for every $5 you have. These can do something if you have a lot of money, right? Like a lot of money. They can do better than a lot of other Jokers in a similar situation. But, I mean, Bull needs to be, you need to have like, you kind of need to have about $40 for these to be better than things around them, right? $40 makes Bull into 80 chips, which is, you know, okay. And it makes Bootstrap into 16 molt, which is just barely putting it above the average, you know, common molt, right? Because the average common, you know, good common's giving you about 15 molt. So if you have less than $40, then they're kind of not that great. They do get better past that point, but holding over 25 if you don't have you know, the seed money or money tree voucher doesn't do anything aside from scaling these. So you could have used that money to get something else that's better. If you do, of course, have seed money or money tree, then these get significantly better because you want to be hoarding more money. As well as if, you know, you have a bunch of like gold seals or any Joker that gives you money in round, you can do a lot of stuff there. If you have like hundreds of dollars, then these are actually like pretty, you know, efficient for their slot, I will say, but they're not consistent in how they do it. They take a good amount of time to really ramp up. You're usually only hitting like this $40-ish mark by around like ante 4 or 5, you know, because you're trying to spend, so you're not dying to these early antes. So to say that they make up for themselves by that point in the run is kind of not true. Getting 80 chips and 16 molt from a Joker on like ante 3 or 4 is pretty bad, actually. It's not that good, and especially when, you know, it does have a condition of, hey, I can't spend my money to like roll down, right? I have to be hoarding my money. I'm not the biggest fan of these Jokers. There's obviously a million situations where they are good, right? If you have a golden Joker, if you have a rocket, if you have Cloud9, you can really like farm in the background. Or even if you have like a bunch of gold seals and a hanging Chad, right? You can farm money that way and they become a lot better. But on their own, if you don't have money generating options, I really don't like picking up these Jokers, in my opinion. It feels bad because you're just saying, okay, well, I'm actually making less money each run effectively to make these work. And when you could just be spending the money on like anything else. They cost way too much money. They have like too much of a startup, I guess is what I'm trying to say. They have too much of an initial cost to really do anything, and they don't do enough for that initial, like, first initial amount. They definitely get better the more money you have, but like, if you have $1 billion, you could just get better Jokers. It's kind of the catch-22. Bloodstone and Burglar. I like these Jokers. I really do. Bloodstone has a 1 in 2 chance for scoring, or for a scoring heart to give 1.5 times molt. That's just idle, right? Or not idle, sorry, ancient Joker, but specifically for hearts. And of course, you know, it works every single time with Oops All Sixes. This is like, I think it's the best. I think it's easily the strongest of like the flush stones: Arrowhead, Bloodstone, Onyx Agate, and Rough Gem. I think that Bloodstone is by far the best, right? It scales the best. I mean, yeah, it's a 1 in 2 chance, but like, just hit Oops All Sixes. Ooh boy. The realistic answer is just hit retriggers, right? If you have retriggers like from, you know, Sock and Buskin or Hack or Ballet, right? Hanging Chad, then it gets actually kind of crazy what this can do for you. Burglar is really cool in my opinion. It's one of the most interesting Jokers. It takes away all of your discards and gives you +3 hands. Now, a lot of people might think, okay, well, what's the point of this? Burglar does a lot of things, actually. It makes it so you can scale your Jokers better because you have more hands. You can play smaller hands because you have more. It gives you money. Even if you win in the same amount of hands you would have had before Burglar, it gives you $3, right? You know, and if you do want to be playing multiple hands for whatever reason, you have Burglar here. Losing... A lot of people... how do I word this? Effectively, a hand and a discard are basically the same. I mean, there's not really any difference until you include other jokers into the mix, but like on their own, they're effectively the same, right? So if you are playing on anything above blue stake and not playing red deck, you'll have 2 discards. So giving up 2 discards for 3 hands is a win in my book, right? You could make like a similar argument on like the power level of this card to Mary Andy, which we'll get to eventually. And I think that they're about equal in power level. I really think that Burglar it's one of those jokers that if you understand what it's useful for, it just feels really good to pick up. The money is great, and I don't know. I like having the options that Burglar provides to, like, if you do find it early. It does feel very nice. Cartomancer gives you a tarot card when blind is selected. This is just solid, right? It's pretty solid in the early game. It can help you deck fix. It can give you money. It can generate jokers. It can give you, enhanced cards to help you score, etc. There's so many things that Cartomancer lets you do. It's not the most efficient card in the entire game, right? But it's just a solid joker. If you find it early, you're pretty happy with it because it can help you like get to your more powerful jokers. You'll probably sell it for a lot of things. There's probably a million jokers that you would sell it for, but if you do, hold on to it for like 3 or 4 rounds, you can really get a lot of value out of it. Arguably how much value or how much money you put into it, you can get out of it in like 3 or 4 rounds. And that's just pretty good. Even if you don't get a tarot card that you want, you could just sell it, right? Tarot cards still sell for $1. So if you hit like Star or Moon or World or, oh gosh, I forgot the other one is. Whatever. If you hit all the flush jokers and they're not useful for you, just sell it, right? And it'll make up for itself. Cartomancer, just solid joker, I do have to say. Card Sharp, on the other hand, is kind of a hit or miss. So Card Sharp gives ×3 molt if played poker hand has already been played this round. This, it can be pretty good if you're playing, high card or pair, or even like 3 of a kind, or technically 5 of a kind actually works very well with it. But if you're playing like straights, Card Sharp's completely useless. Flushes are not the easiest to use the Card Sharp because of how many cards you have to get. But if you're playing a low card hand and you have just a good amount of flat molt, Card Sharp giving ×3 molt, pretty easy. It's not that hard of a condition to play 2 hands. Effectively, Card Sharp effectively acts like Acrobat in the sense that, well, Card Sharp you only have to play 2 hands, but Acrobat you have to play like 4 hands, right? So I don't think Card Sharp is the best joker by any means, especially because like it does facilitate playing like pair, high card, 2 pair at best, and to get the most value out of it typically, or a lot of deck fixing to get like 5 of a kind. With 5 of a kind, I mean, it kind of goes crazy, right? But it's not the easiest, and it's not that great with like full hands of 5, which are usually the best way to score. But it's fine. It's solid. You can pick it up if you're in like a tight situation. It will do pretty good work for you. It's just solid. Very solid. Ceremonial Dagger destroys the joker to the right of it and gains molt equal to double the sell value of the joker. This is like incredibly hard to use. The payoff isn't really that big, and like unless you're consistently killing perishable jokers with it, you're not gonna have a really easy way to get that to like fuel it, right? The only real joker that fuels this is Riff Raff, right? And Riff Raff gives you common jokers, so they're not going to get that much sell value, especially if you hit Jimbo, which has the least amount of sell value in the whole game. Rental jokers don't really work, rental jokers don't really work too well with Ceremonial Dagger because they all sell for 1. I mean, Egg and Gift Card can kind of do some work with it, but if you're playing with Egg and Gift Card, you're kind of planning on selling them. That's more powerful than getting a little bit of molt out of, your Ceremonial Dagger. I think this joker like desperately needs a rework. I'm very surprised that people thought my idea for the Ceremonial Dagger rework was too strong. I thought the card is, or the joker is so bad that my change puts it in line with other jokers of its thing. You still have to put a lot of money into it, and it scales. It just doesn't scale very well. I don't know, man. It's a very weird joker, and I'm not the biggest fan of it. A joker I am a fan of, though, is Castle. Okay, so I admit it, I completely undervalued Castle. I had only played with it a couple times, but when I first talked about it, but after playing with it a lot more, like I said, as I was trying to do, this joker goes crazy. Castle gives +3 chips per discarded suit displayed, right? So let's say hearts, you can discard 5 hearts, so gain 15 chips. That's actually, like, kind of significant. You're not going to be getting 15 chips every single time, and usually it's not even that good, but if you're probably going to get like 6 9, sometimes even 12 chips, and of course 15. Usually when you discard because of Castle, and like that actually does add up. You're gonna, if you have like 3 discards and you're just getting 9 chips every time, you're getting what, 27 chips added to your Castle every round? That's pretty significant, I do have to say. It's not the best Joker ever. It doesn't scale like perfectly. It's not the best scaling, but in the early to mid game, this can really pop off for you. And sometimes, right, if you get a lot of discards, you're playing red deck, even, hey man, you're playing checkered deck and your Castle's only going on the hearts and spades, then yeah, you could get a lot of chips out of this and like keep it for the late game where it can actually do some quite work. Castle's like a weird Joker where like it's pretty good in the early game. In the mid game, it kind of falls off a little bit, right? Because it's not scaling as well as other Jokers. But in the late game, having a large amount of chips when you already have a large amount of mult actually does do a lot. So it's like a lot of other chip Jokers that scale where it gets really, it kind of has a lull in the mid games. I think how chips work, like feel in this game, in my opinion, is that chips really do fall off mid game, but like come back strong in the late game. Then there's Cloud9 and Certificate. Cloud9 gives $1 per 9 in your deck. This is one of the most powerful money sources in the game because of the fact that, hey, none of them are going to hit as much money as Cloud9, except for maybe Rocket, and Rocket's not going to do that for actually ever, because you have to hit so many bosses to do it. Cloud9 will give the most money of like any Joker. I don't think there's any Joker that can give more money than Cloud9. If you have like a billion, 9s in your deck, you can do it. And it's just solid. Even when you pick it up, it's exactly as good as Golden Joker. If you're playing erratic deck and you have a lot of 9s, you can get this and get a lot of money. The main problem with 9s is that they don't really have any great synergy, right? They can't be hacked. They can't be, socked. I guess if you have Paradolia, they could. Like, the best way you're going to do with 9s is like a flush build or a 5 of a kind, flush 5, etc. Playing a lot of 9s just for a higher tier poker hand. You can do that, right? You can definitely play like flush 5 with 9s, and that's pretty solid. But there aren't too many Jokers that, there's just like very few ways to actually synergize with 9s themselves. Odd Todd, I guess. Even 8s have like Fibonacci, right? 9s just don't really have anything. Certificate gives a random card with a seal at the start of round. This can be a really good way to generate like cards for hologram, or if you're really looking for specific seals like blue seals because you really need harder to get planets, right? Like 5 of a kind. Then using Certificate to get blue seals can be pretty good. You can actually like farm Certificate in a way like, hey, I'm really looking for red seals because I want to get red seal Steel Kings. If you just hit a red seal on something, you could eventually strength it up to a king. Is that going to happen? No, but sometimes you are looking for it for your builds, right? If you desperately need like these red seals and you're just not hitting it, right, and you're trying to play like a Baron Mine build, Certificate could get you there. Not consistently, but it does have its niche situations. I'm not the biggest fan of Certificate. I rarely take it. I think I've only ever taken it from used it off of Judgment or a Buffoon pack, right? But there are like very clear situations where it can be quite good, and I've yet to have it with hologram, right? But if I did get a hologram, hologram Certificate run, I bet it would be really strong. Speaking of hologram, we have Constellation and hologram. Constellation gains 0.1x mult every time a planet is played. This is like really strong, as it makes your planet planets you find even more valuable. You're going to be finding majority planets that aren't useful for you, but they cost like $3. You buy a planet, you gain 0.10, like for $30, you'll gain 1x mult, right? Over the course of your run, and that can be good. Constellation can very, very easily scale to like 5, 6x throughout the course of a run if you get it with a good enough money. And, Astronomer does help. It does help, not that much, but it does. And, I mean, Constellation is just solid. However, Constellation is significantly worse than Hologram. That doesn't mean Constellation is bad, but dude, Hologram's insane. Hologram gains 0.25x mult whenever a card is added to your deck. This, obviously, I mean, it works well with Certificate or Marble Joker. DNA makes it work. Adding cards to your deck from standard packs, or if you have spectral packs that hit like Grim, Familiar, or Incantation, I think is what they all are. There's so many ways to add cards to your deck, and like adding 10 cards to your deck is 2.5 times mult. That's a lot. You can easily get a hologram that gets to like times 10, times 15 mult throughout a run, like consistently. Like, hologram goes crazy. It scales so much faster than a lot of other jokers similar to it because there's so many ways to add cards to your deck. You could pick up Magic Trick as a voucher as well to get more cards for hologram. Hologram does make it so getting like higher tier poker hands is quite difficult, of course. I mean, unless you're playing DNA and that's what's fueling your hologram. So there is that, but like, so it's giving you so much X molt that if your molt is coming from your jokers with hologram anyway and not your poker hand, then it could just go crazy. These two don't really synergize very well together because, well, Constellation wants you to be playing towards your poker hand versus, you know, hologram wants you to be playing towards flat molt jokers, but they're still both incredibly powerful, strong picks that can carry many, many runs. Dusk and Diet Cola are definitely cards of all time. So, Dusk is better than Acrobat, right? I don't think that that's a hot take. I think that if you think it is a hot take, I don't know what to tell you. Dusk re-triggers all cards on your final hand of the round. Re-triggering cards is just way stronger than ×3 molt. It just is, at almost every stage of the game. If your cards have, well, if your cards have enhancements, if your cards have seals, if you have jokers that benefit from the cards that you're playing being re-triggered, then Dusk is just, like, in almost every situation, it's going to be better than Acrobat, right? And Dusk isn't even that great, in my opinion. Yeah, there's a lot of scenarios where it does help you, right? But Dusk feels like one of those jokers that, like, if you are picking it up, you're kind of either in a situation where you're like, dude, I desperately need anything to win, or it doesn't really do, it's just a win more card, right? Having to play all your hands out, especially if you are playing a deck where, hey, you know, I'm getting a lot of value from re-triggers, then Dusk probably doesn't matter a lot of the time. It feels like it's one of those jokers that gets used a lot in, like, when you're already scaled and you already have a good build and you're just trying to go for a high score on re-triggers. Dusk gets used a lot there, but it's just, it feels like a win more joker almost always. It just rarely does it feel like a joker worth picking up unless you are in a super tight situation, which, I mean, sure, right? But there's a billion jokers that are really good in one specific situation, right? Versus there's you know, only so many jokers that are good in a plethora of situations. Diet Cola gives a double tag when you sell it. This can be fine, especially if it's rental because you spend no money on it, but guys, skipping is bad. It just is. I don't know what to say. There's very few situations where skipping is better than just playing the blind out. Like, most of the skip tags are bad. Even when you do get a good skip tag, typically it's not good anyway, because it's better to just have a regular shop and make money. And, like, I get that people like to skip a lot, right? But it's just not worth it. Skipping means you lose out on a shop. And losing out on a shop means you lose out on, effectively, a $5 for a reroll. You're effectively giving up $5 for a shop because you would have had to reroll to get that many shops throughout the run, right? And why, would you just throw away money for no reason? There's always the situation, right? If you do see, hey, I'm trying to play gold stake and I want to hit, you know, as many new jokers for gold sticker as possible, right? Then, you know, Diet Cola can be good there if you see a negative tag in the shop. But I think that Diet Cola is, I really do think this is like a bottom 5 joker in the entire game. I don't think that's a hot take. I think that the amount of times where Diet Cola actually matters in your run is so low, especially even if you force it, it's almost always wrong to force, right? Rarely is it ever worth using the double tag that Diet Cola gives you. Rarely is it ever worth. And if that's the case, then picking up Diet Cola ever is rarely worth it. I don't know. I get that people are gonna argue with me on that, but I think that I just think skipping is worthless. I don't know. I think that skipping 9 times out of 10, not even. I think it's more like I don't even know. I think it's more like 99 times out of 100 skipping isn't worth it. Aside from, of course, you know, ante-1, right? If you skip the first blind because you got a good, get a free rare joker in the shop, or get, the full free first shop, or something, or, investment tag. Yeah, those are great, but it's impossible to have Diet Cola skip the first blind, so that doesn't really add up. Fibonacci gives +8 molt on scoring 2, 3, 5, 8, or ace. This is just a really solid early game joker. It works well with, Hanging Chad, of course. Works well with Hack, and it's just solid. It doesn't scale that well, right? Retriggers, of course, help it a lot, but, you know, retriggers can be put on better cards like Photograph. It's definitely not bad. There's definitely a million, like, situations where this just is a solid Joker to pick up, right? But it doesn't scale, right? There's no scaling in it. It doesn't really do that well in the late game, so... Of course, having strong early game Jokers is fine, and that's what you should use Fibonacci with, but if you're holding onto a Fibonacci by, like, ante-5, I think it's just completely outscaled by so many other Jokers, and that's unfortunate. It is, like, nice, you know, if you've ever had, like, a 5-of-a-kind ace build using Fibonacci, I've done it before, it's really fun. I won't deny that. It's a very fun Joker to use, but yikes. Erosion gives +4 molt per card missing from your deck below the starting size. I'm sorry, guys. I said below 52, but there is one deck in the entire game that doesn't start at 52, and it's an abandoned deck. My bad. Still, though, Erosion, I mean, +4 molt per card missing is kind of big. You can very easily have about 8 cards missing by antes like 4 or 5, and getting +32 molt on, like, ante 4, that's pretty solid. A lot of times, like, Erosion will easily give you, like, 80 molt or more throughout a game, and that's a lot for a flat molt Jokers can give you. Erosion's just a very powerful flat molt Joker. That's all it is. It does take a lot of setup, right? You know, cards like Trading Card, or like a Hangman, or Sixth Sense. There's a couple other that destroy. I'm just blanking. Are really good with it, yeah, but... You do have to note that if you are trying to play, like, a straight build or something, Erosion's probably not the best, because while it is good to remove cards with straights, I mean, you're probably keeping, like, typically, straights, you do play 10 through 5, in my opinion. I think that's the best way to play straight. Ace through 10 is fine, and, like, ace through 5 is fine. You can do it, but it's not as consistent because there's less hits. But you can do it. But if you are playing 10 through 5, that means you're getting rid of, what? Everything below 5, which will be 16 cards, and everything above 10, which will be 16 cards. So, 32 times 4, 120, 128? Alright, I lied. Maybe that's actually still pretty good. I didn't think it would be that high until I did the math. But, I don't know. Erosion is just a solid Joker. This is a really good Joker. I think that actually tells you a lot. If you're playing straights, you know, and you're getting rid of 32 cards, you can get a lot of molt from it. Flower Pot gives ×3 molt if played hand contains one of each suit. This is, like, actually pretty hard to make use out of, in my opinion. Like, if you have a lot of wild cards, yeah, you can definitely do it. But if you have a lot of wild cards, that means you don't really have other enhancements. And what are you really getting out of it? ×3 molt? When there's dozens of other ways to get at least ×3 molt in the game. I mean, Flower Pot, like, it's one of the hardest Jokers to use, and what you're getting from it is it's not, like, that much. ×3 molt is like standard for Jokers like this, and like I'm saying, a hard condition is like, yikes. Flashcard gains +2 molt whenever you reroll. It's like, hard. It's really hard to get value out of this in the early game because the reroll is such a steep cost at 5. If you get reroll vouchers, yeah, you can definitely make it a lot better, but it feels like a Joker that's really powerful in the mid game when you are actually first able to start doing a lot of rolls. It can actually get pretty high up there. I mean, for the money you're putting in to molt ratio, it's probably not the best, right? Like, how do I word this? At its bare minimum, it's just kind of worse than Bootstrap, right? Because think of it this way. The base cost of a reroll is $5 to give +2 molt. Bootstrap gives +2 molt for $5. So if you do have reroll vouchers, then that goes out the window, right? But you have the amount of money you're putting into Flashcard to make it really do anything is not the best. That being said, though, if you do get it, you know, you just have it, you don't really have anything, you just got a free space, and you're just doing some rolling to try and find something good, it can pretty easily get up to like 30, 40 molt, and like, it's not the worst at those amounts. Yeah, there's still way, way, way better Jokers, but it has situations where it can be useful. There are not that many situations though. Like I'm saying, there's so many times where it's just a really bad money sink, and like, even if you're just rolling and you're like, okay, I just have flash card and I'm just gonna roll a couple times. Okay, well then you have a joker that's like, okay, I'm getting +8 molt from this joker. What's the point of having it? There's so many other jokers that can do better with way less investment. It just doesn't, I don't know, man. I just don't think this one's very good. Like, people were trying to tell me, I'm like, dude, I just don't get it. I tried using it so many times. I tried using it where I did want to reroll and, like, get value out of the flash card, and it felt terrible. I had it where I just kept it in the background, and I was just rerolling, you know, how I would typically reroll, and it still felt terrible. And I don't know if that's because I didn't hit reroll voucher in any of those runs, or whatever, or for other billion other reasons, but flashcard, I mean, it was the common denominator, so that's all I can really say. Gift card adds $1 sell value to all jokers at the end of round. This is like actually just a fun pickup. It's just really funny, I'm not gonna lie. I've had runs where I'll pick up gift card and then a temperance in the same shop, and I'll just let it sit until my temperance gives me like $40, and I'm like, okay, well, explosive term time. I mean, there is synergy with, like, Swashbuckler, I guess, but it's not the greatest joker. It doesn't really do much in a lot of situations. Probably the majority of situations doesn't really do anything, but, I mean, it's a funny joker. It is. I wish they would add more things that synergize with sell price. It's Ceremonial Dagger, Swashbuckler, Egg, and Gift Card, and Temperance, I guess. But, yeah, it's rough. Four Fingers makes it so straights and flushes only need 4 cards to be made. That's pretty simple, right? Well, Four Fingers actually has a hidden secret to it that makes it one of a really powerful joker. If you are playing a straight, right? And you play 10, 9, 8, 7, right? To play your straight, and they're all spades. Then you play a 6 of diamonds, right? You would think, okay, well, it's just going to play straight, right? No, it plays a straight flush. This also works for flush 5. If you play, say, all diamond kings except for one that's a spade, it'll still count for flush 5, or flush house. And, well, straight flush, flush 5, and flush house are some of the highest scoring hands in the entire game. I think you get what I'm going, I think you guys get what I'm what I'm saying here. Four Fingers can really facilitate these just, like, powerful straight builds, or like straight flush builds. It doesn't even have to be like how I said it, 10, 9, 8, 6, like 10, 9, 8, 7, right? You could do actually 10 is a diamond, and then like 9, 8, 7 are, or like 9, 8, 7 are all spades, and you play like a 2 of spades, right? That'll still count as a straight flush. Like, Four Fingers just is quite powerful. It's like mainly in the fact that it lets you play more powerful poker hands easier. Hack retriggers 2, 3s, 4s, and 5s. This works wonderfully with jokers that, you know, retrigger or like love retrigger effects, like say Bloodstone or Idol or not photograph. Sorry, whatever. There's so many ways to use this, right? One of the best cases that I found is putting lucky, making these lucky cards. Now, you might be thinking, oh, isn't one of the best ways to make use of lucky cards to use oops all 6s? And that is true. However, if you just re-trigger cards, then it really doesn't make the oops matter that much. Say you have a full hand, like you're playing 5 5s that are all lucky. Well, each one has a 1 in 5 chance to trigger, or 1 in 15 for the money, and then there's 5 of them, and then they all do it twice. You're pretty likely going to hit one of the lucky hits, and if you do hit a lucky hit, you have Lucky Cat. Lucky Cat gains 0.25 times molt when a lucky card triggers. Lucky Cat scales really well. It just, I don't know. One of the best ways, of course, to do this is, yeah, you can have oops all 6s, right? But again, having multiple re-triggers really lets you hit a lot of lucky hits. And I mean, Lucky Cat can scale about as well as Hologram. And Hologram, if you've played this game, you know Hologram goes crazy. Lucky Cat can scale pretty well. Lucky Cat is really good in just these re-trigger builds. If you have, a Photo Chad, it's a very popular combo. Lucky Cat sees a lot of use in that combo because, hey, it's only one card, and, well, what's really better for an enhancement on your card, right? You could make it glass, but it's probably going to break because you're, using it so much. Or you can make it lucky as a 1 in 5 chance to give you flat molt, which then, works really well with the photograph, and it will scale your lucky cat. Lucky card is just pretty good with retriggers, I do have to say. Glass Joker gives 0.75x molt every time a glass card is destroyed. This is actually, like, I say that a lot. This is a really interesting Joker in my opinion, because it kind of actually incentivizes you to deck fix using glass, right? You want to be playing a bunch of glass cards so they break. Even if only 10 glass cards break, you're getting 7.5 times molt from this Joker. It can actually go insane for scaling, right? It's not the easiest Joker to use, right? Not Magician. Oh gosh, what is it? Whatever. The Joker that gives, glass, it only gives one at a time. You're probably going to need a lot of deaths to be able to get a lot of glass, right? But if you do get it rolling, this can go insane. 7.5 times molt from only 10 cards being broken as glass. Dude, that's not very many. You could easily get like 20 or 30 in a run if you are specifically going out of your way to do this, to scale a glass Joker. And that can be a huge. I don't think Glass Joker is as consistent or as good as like Lucky Cat or Hologram, but it's still very solid. I'd say it's about on the same tier as Constellation, just it's a little harder to use, but it gives so much more of a payoff. Then there's Hiker. Hiker gives permanently adds 5 chips to every scoring card. I mean, Hiker is like fine. It can be pretty strong if you pick it up early or if you get a lot of retriggers, but it doesn't scale. It's not very great, and like, this is like a little nitpick, but I've seen people complain about Hiker because they're like, okay, well, sometimes I just like have to think more about my cards because I have to see how many chips they give because of Hiker. And like, that's not a real weakness, but I do understand how it can be frustrating because it's not really obvious on what it's giving. I mean, it's such a minor thing, so it's not like that big of a deal. Loyalty card gives ×4 molt after 6 hands are played. This works if you have a lot of hands like Burglar, or you have both hand vouchers and you're not playing black deck, so you can guarantee it every round. But if you don't have those, then it only works every other round, and ×4 molt every other round is pretty bad, I do have to say. I've never had Loyalty card and Burglar together, so I've never tested it, but that's kind of what I would expect for Loyalty card to be good with. Otherwise, I think this Joker's just kind of bad. I mean, like I'm saying, if you do have like Burglar, or if you have every single like hand voucher and you can do it every round, having ×4 molt is pretty good. It's just better than Acrobat, but you're not going to be doing that consistently. And yeah, there's very few times I would ever take this Joker. I'm so serious. Like, the fact that it's 6 hands is so awkward. If there were 5, I think it would, like, actually be, like, significantly better, right? Because it only takes 1 voucher to be able to play it every single round. But the fact that it's 6, it requires both vouchers or Burglar, and that's too much. That's too much investment for what you're not really much getting out of it. Joker Stencil gains ×1 ×1 molt for each empty Joker slot, not including Joker Stencil. This is like actually pretty solid early. You can just get ×3 ×2 molt for no condition at all. Having an empty Joker slot, not really a condition. So yeah, it doesn't scale like at all because, well, having more Jokers equal more better, but I mean, it's not the worst. If you do have 5 of them, I've seen it. I've seen screenshots. I've gotten close. I've gotten 3. If you have a lot of them, you can they actually stack, right? They don't count themselves. So you can have, ×5 molt 5 times, and that could, like, 5 to the 5th. That's actually really funny. Is it happening? No. Is it really, really funny when it happens? Oh, for sure. It's incredibly funny. And I mean, still, the use case of Joker Stencil, get in the early game, right? It'll multiply your molt. Typically, it's going to be like ×2 or ×3 is usually what you're getting from it. But it's just solid. Really solid early game Joker. Luchador disables the current boss blind if you sell it during the round. This is, I mean, it's just a solid niche pickup. You pick it up when necessary if you need to skip. You don't pick it up if you don't. Just a solid Joker. It does its job. Way better than Matador does. But it's just solid. I mean, obviously, right, it is worse than, like, Chico, but this is an uncommon Joker versus a legendary, right? Luchador, it does lose a lot of value because of the director's cut for sure, but it's still just good. If you, there's so many times where a Luchador can save your run, and it's just solid. Madness is a really powerful Joker. I don't think people realize this yet. So, Madness does not need to be fueled. I'm going to point this out right now. You do not need to sacrifice a card for Madness to scale. Madness gains 0.5x molt when the smaller big blind is selected, and then destroys a random other Joker. So the way that you can make use out of Madness is, well, Eternal cards can't be destroyed. You take Madness, it scales pretty damn well. You can easily get this thing up to like 5x molt, right, if you find it early, and that's solid. Then, because of Eternal Jokers in later stakes past Black Stake? I think Black Stake is where Eternal Jokers are added. Then Madness, I mean, you just pick up good Eternal Jokers with it, and there's no downside at all, right? Yeah, it's tricky to use, and it's not great in every situation, or if you have better Jokers that you don't want destroyed, then Madness isn't great, right? But it's still solid. Solid Joker. Has so many uses cases for it, and like, I've seen people hate on Madness in my comments when I've talked about it before. I don't get it. It's really not that bad if you're just playing above Black Stake. If you're playing below Black Stake, sure, right? I get that can be pretty terrible. But above Black Stake, it's just a solid Joker. Completely good. Or like good and fine.
Matador.
Matador gives $8 if you trigger the boss blind. This only works on 11 out of 28 boss blinds in the game. And like, hey, even if you do hit it, there's still a chance you won't beat the boss. It gives you, so it will give you 24 or, like 32 or $40, depending on how many hands you have, if you can trigger it every single time, right? But hey, sometimes you could still just lose the boss because you're trying to do this to Matador, right? And that's happened, right? I've seen my friends, they'll be playing they'll like be like, oh, I could play Matador here, and then they lose, right? Because they have like, they're overconfident in it and they need more hands to actually win. Or like people will pick it up against Jokers it doesn't work against, thinking it does. It doesn't work against the Tooth, man. Like, it's just a terrible Joker. It is the worst Joker in the game. I don't think anyone can argue against that. Like, it's so bad it's getting reworked even. So yeah, it's awkward. It's it's one of, if not the most situational Joker in the entire game. And even when you do get it, its payoff isn't the best. Marble Joker adds a stone card to your deck when blind is selected. This, obviously, is amazing with like Hologram, or if you get to like Stone Joker. Plasma deck actually likes stone cards a pretty good amount because, well, Plasma deck. But Marble Joker is just a good, solid way to add cards to your deck. I already talked about how powerful Hologram was, and having ways to ramp your Hologram is pretty solid. Marble Joker, it's not the best, right? It's not the best way to add cards to your deck, but still very, very solid. And I think hating on it doesn't make sense. It's just a solid Joker. Mary Andy. Mary Andy is such a funny Joker. I didn't have Mary Andy was like one of, I think it might have even been like my last unlock, right? So it took me so long to get this, and when I got it was like, oh my gosh, it's just so awesome. Mary Andy gives +3 discards and -1 hand size. This is the best Joker for cycling your deck, like, in the entire game. The only one that you could really argue is, like, I guess technically, Burglar is pretty good, but, like, Burglar is just +1 total. This is +3 total, right? Yeah, you lose -1 hand size, but, like, 3 discards is 15 cards you can cycle through your deck. It's really good if you really need to hit specific face card, or, like, specific, enhanced cards or seals. It can, work incredibly well with Yorick. Ooh, it's just a really fun Joker to play with. I like it. I love the art. It's one of my, it's like growing on me. It's one of my favorite Jokers. It's just so cool. It's solid. It's a good utility Joker if you really need it. If you have, Jokers that do benefit from like discards, it's amazing, right? Because you get 3 discards. Just solid Joker. Mime re-triggers cards in your hand. This, I mean, it works pretty well with like gold or steel cards, but the main use case for this is like Baron, or Raised Fist, or Reserve Parking, or Shoot the Moon, like a bunch of different like of these Jokers, right? Mime is pretty powerful on its own, even if you don't get like those other Jokers, just because of steel cards. Having Mime with a bunch of steel cards playing like a high card build can actually do some pretty good damage, right? it is very situational. It does require a lot of setup or like another really good Joker to go alongside it, but I don't think anyone would ever say mime is a weak Joker. I mean, obviously it's very powerful in the sense that it's like necessary to get Nan-Inth in a lot of setups, right? When you're doing like, Baron setups. So it has that niche as well. And that's cool. I don't know, man. I like the fact that there are different like Nan-Inth setups. I hope that they add more that are more varied, because that's a really cool niche for a Joker to have, to be completely useless, or not completely useless, but not that great in the first 8 antes, but it's really good in Endless. And that's how Mime kind of feels to me. Oh, do note though that Mime also gives you double planet cards, which is probably the best use of it, in my opinion. We're always going to have to talk about this combo in this video, and it's one that makes me a little upset. Midas Mask and Vampire. Midas Mask makes all face cards you play golden. This is actually like decent. It provides a good amount of money throughout the run, and enhanced cards if you have like, well, driver's license or even, Vampire, right? But the main use case, of course, is with Vampire, right? Vampire strips enhancements from cards and then gains 0.1x molt per. So what you do is you place Midas Mask on the left, Vampire on the right. You play your cards out, they'll get turned golden, and then they'll get stripped by the Vampire. If they're already golden, then you do it the other way around, you get stripped and then re-golden, so they're permanently golden. This is a fine combo. It's solid, it's only really 2 cards of setup. Yeah, you probably need some molt to make it work, but it's just pretty simple. It does make it so you can't play enhanced cards, which is a pretty big deal. Not being able to play enhanced cards can matter, right? But hey, you get a pretty easy combo to scale into, ante 8. Thing is though, this is one of those like combos that did get nerfed, right, when the patch came out. So it really doesn't scale well into Endless at all. It's solid for your first 8 antes, right? It can definitely win, but it scales very poorly into Endless. And that's something a lot of people, kind of care about. I really hope that they add a way. I hope actually that they rework Blue Stake to make it so you play 10 antes. I think that would be a great rework for Blue Stake. And then, well, it would change the meta a lot. Something like Vampire Midas Mask, which just kind of barely is good enough to get to ante 8, actually falls off, in a ante 9 or 10 scenario, if they were still, scaled fairly. It would kind of start to fall off, which makes it so that mid-game based Jokers, like, well, these, would have a different kind of niche than late-game based Jokers. And I think it would shake up the game, like, actually a pretty significant amount. Onyx Agate gives plus 7 molt per scoring club. This provides plus 35 molt with a club flush. This can be pretty powerful in early to mid-game for sure, but by the like mid to late game, you're probably getting more than 35 molt from a Joker, which kind of makes Onyx Agate not really do that much, right? It really forces you to play a club flush, which is fine, right? Flushes are a fine hand. You can get a lot of like value out of flushes. They let you play with a lot of different Jokers because it lets you play 5 cards and have a decent scaling hand. It's not the best, but decent scaling hand. But you can still, hey, I could play all face cards as my flush, right? Or I could just, have my photo chatted for flush, or etc., right? However, like I said, in the mid to late game, 35 molt isn't that great. There's no scaling, and like, retriggers can't help, right? But if you're going to play a retrigger build, then you have better Jokers to want a retrigger than Onyx Agate. I don't think this is the worst of the... Actually... No, I think Onyx Agate is the worst of the flush stones. Because I think, in my opinion, it goes Bloodstone, Rough Gem, Arrowhead, and then Agate. I think 250 chips is better than 35 molt. I think it's easier to get, like, an equivalent amount of molt than it is to get an equivalent amount of chips, right? Or, similarly. I really do think Arrowhead is just a little bit better than Onyx Agate, personally. Then there's Mr. Bones. Mr. Bones lets you not die if you lose a round. You have to score at least 25% to not die, though. This, like, similar to, like, a lot of different Jokers, it's really powerful in a pitch. It's like Luchador. You can actually use this to beat the final boss, and you'll still win the run, which is really funny. You won't make any money from it, though, because, you died, but that's actually really funny. I've seen people do it where they'll be like, dude, I'm barely able to even beat this final boss line, then they find Mr. Bones, who like, yo, this is so great. And then they just end the run, like, losing, but because of Bones, they still get to win. That's awesome. Bones, like, just the fact that it lets you do that is a really, really cool trick. It's not the greatest Joker, right? It's super niche, but, like, at least it does help you win, right? There's a lot of really niche Jokers that don't really help you win, but Bones, I mean, hey, that's the whole point of it. Oops, all sixes. It actually doubles all listed probabilities. I know that it says it increases them by 1, but if you have 2 oops all sixes, it makes it so your 1 in X goes to 4 in X rather than 3 in X, like you would think. That's not really that useful. There's only like 2 things in the entire game where having a 4 in X makes it guaranteed. It's Space Joker 4 and 4, and Wheel is 4 and 4. I don't think anything else like 4 and 4 matters on. Like lucky cards, yeah, it's nice, right? It makes it 4 and 5 and then 4 and 15, but it's not that necessary. Oops all sixes, just really nice. I like playing lucky cards. I like playing with Space Joker. I like playing with Bloodstone. Like there's so many use cases where oops all sixes just is strong. It's not the greatest Joker, right? Sometimes it's not even worth it in your build that does have these 1 in X kind of scenarios, because retriggers are kind of just better, but it's still solid. Still just a solid Joker. It just provides a lot of utility to some of your other Jokers. Speaking of a Joker that provides utility to your other Jokers, we have Pareidolia. Pareidolia makes all cards into face cards. This can be used with Photograph, or Sock and Buskin, or Faceless Joker, or it can make you go into the plant and lose, or the mark, I guess, as well, which is really funny. Just, Pareidolia is very solid. It's really nice with, like, Caneo, because Caneo, once you destroy face cards, and you can destroy any card with that, and that's really powerful there. It doesn't really work with, like, Trib or that many Jokers, but the few Jokers it does work with is pretty significant, I do have to say, that it has a good niche in what it allows you to do. Rocket gives $1 at the end of round and increases by 2 for each boss blind beaten. This is one of the best scaling money options in the entire game, and it starts to give you more money than Golden Joker after 2 antes. Like I was talking about with Cloud9, having like a really high scaling money Joker can be quite useful, right? Hey, in the late game, you got like $1 billion to start rolling. Find the really good Jokers, find your blueprint, find your... I don't even know, dude. Find your photo chat, I guess. But have more money, more better, right? It's a roguelike. It's a shop simulator roguelike, basically. More money, more better. Just nice to have. It's a solid pickup, basically anywhere from like ante 1 to 3. I really wouldn't pick it up past that point, because like you have to beat the boss blind for it to really do anything, and like you have to beat 2 boss blinds for it to actually like matter. And even like $5 by like ante 5 is not the best, right? However, you could be getting $9 by ante 5 if you got an ante 1. That's pretty good. Ramen gives ×2 molt and loses 0.01 molt whenever you discard. Ramen, it's supposed to work with like Green Juggler or Burglar, and it can, but it kind of falls short of like every other X molt option in the entire game. It only gives ×2 molt, right? And that's a pretty big condition to not be discarding. So yeah, it's really not that great. It's one of the worst food items in the game, in my opinion. A lot of people really don't like it, and it's kind of... I'm struggling to think of an X-Molt option that it's better than. I don't think it's better than Acrobat, and that says a lot. I don't think it's better than freaking Seeing Double, and that kind of says a lot. It's just awkward. Satellite gives $1 per unique planet you've played this run. This is like rarely worth it. It starts at $0, so you have to play like a bunch of planets before it actually does anything. And like it caps at like 13, I think, or something like that, 12, which, yeah, that's not terrible, right? But if you're going through that much effort to get secret hands to make the scale, then you would think it would at least be better than like Cloud9, and it kind of just isn't better than Cloud9. Cloud9, like, very, very easily can get above the 12 that this can give you, and then do better. And you're not, like, you don't have to go out of your way to be playing the secret hands to get it. I'm just not a big fan of of satellite at all, and it really bothers me that I had to like go out of my way to save up $400 to get this, right? Because this is one of the harder, it's not the hardest, but it's one of the more difficult unlocks in the game to get for this pitiful Joker. Rough Gem gives $1 whenever a diamond is scored. This can actually like give a good amount of money. You can farm this pretty easily just by playing like 1 or 2 cards that have diamonds. Retriggers make it go kind of crazy. Rough Gem builds like really do give a lot of money that you can make use of for your flushes. And like I said, flushes have a lot of flexibility. They're the easiest 5-card build in the game to make. So having like money to use, like to throw around because of Rough Gem is pretty nice. I really do think Rough Gem is the second best of those like flush stones, air quote, jokers. And yeah, diamonds are probably the worst because they only have 1 joker that synergizes with them, unlike the others that have like 2 or better. It's still good, right? Because this one is just so solid. Yeah, just because clubs and spades have, you know, agate and spearhead, and which means they have more, that doesn't mean they're good, right? Like arrowhead and onyx agate, they're fine, but I don't think they're even remotely as close to like Rough Gem, and then I don't even think Rough Gem is remotely as close as strong as Bloodstone. Seltzer retriggers all played cards for 10 rounds. This is just good. It helps you with scaling. It helps you with getting money. It helps you, you know, win rounds if you need it. It's just a very solid joker. Yeah, yeah, it's like every other food joker when it eventually goes away, but I still think Seltzer's probably the best food joker. Maybe Banana's better, right? Because I mean, Cavendish is really strong, but Seltzer's still pretty good. I don't think that's that hot of a take to say it's probably top 2 food. Actually, Banana might be better. I really do think it is, but it's still solid. There's so many times where getting a Seltzer just saves your run, or it just makes it so you can actually scale into the late game. Just solid pickup. Not really much to say about it. Seeing Double gives ×2 mole if played hand contains a club and another suit. This isn't necessarily a club joker as much as it a wild card joker, but I kind of wish that it was like worded to not specify clubs, right? Because the first time I ever saw this joker, I thought it was a club joker, and I got baited by it. I do have to admit. And I was like, wait a minute. So I'm being told you should use it with wild cards, and then it's pretty decent. I do have to say, getting ×2 molt for having to play a hand with a wild card is not that great, especially because again, Lovers only hits one card, so getting a lot of wild cards can be pretty difficult. But I mean, yeah. To be fair, everyone and their mother is like asking for Lovers to hit at least 2 cards, make 2 wild cards, which would probably be like significantly better, but you know, whatever. We have to live on the whims of local thunk buffing Lovers. Showman makes duplicate planet, tarot, and joker cards appear in the shop. This is not that great in like a regular 8 ante run. I would literally never take this in Gold Stake, actually. I think it's completely useless. However, if you are going for high score runs, this is great. You can get blueprints, like copies of Blueprint, Brainstorm, Baron, Mime. You get, I mean, those are kind of the only ones you're really looking for in those scenarios. But if you do get like copies of it, that's amazing. Showman is a win more joker. If you're trying to go for these high score builds where you already actually beat the first 8 antes, then Showman's really good there. But it basically does absolutely nothing in the first 8 antes. I literally would never pick this up in a Gold Stake run, like ever. I think that this is the only joker that you should never pick up in a Gold Stake run. I think that's not a hot take because it just doesn't help you win Gold Stake. It's fine for high score runs, which are a completely different thing, right? That's like a completely different kind of run you're going for, or challenge runs, or etc., right? But in Gold Stake, it just doesn't help you get to the 8 antes at all. In fact, it kind of makes it harder because you could just, if you pick it up, well, now you're getting jokers that you probably don't want, you know, because you're getting your own jokers. Or, you know, it makes so if you're holding a planet or a tarot card, well, they're going to show up in the shop again, which kind of you don't want sometimes. Shortcut makes it so you can skip spaces in straights. So you could play like 10, 9, 8, 7, and then a 5, and then that would count as a straight. Or like 10, 8, 6, 10, 8, 6, 4, 2 counts as a straight. So if you want to play like an even Steven straight, ooh, it's fine. It doesn't help that much if you're building your deck correctly. It can make straight flushes with like four fingers super easy though, and like I do like four fingers shortcut runs because of the amount of straight flushes you can get, which is really fun. But I don't think this is that great of a joker. I think that, like, as a utility joker, the utility it provides is pretty mediocre, and like it doesn't help you score like at all really. So it's just like meh. I mean, I guess it helps in the early game where you don't have deck fixing, but like it's not that hard to get straights if you know how to discard properly. I don't know. It's just there. I'm not gonna hate on it. It has its situations, but man. Smeared Joker and Sixth Sense. These are like actually some of the more interesting jokers in my opinion. However, Sixth Sense is a joker of all time. Smeared Joker makes it so hearts and diamonds are counted as one, and then spades and clubs are counted as like the same suit. This is like really, really powerful with Ancient Joker, or I guess technically Bloodstone, or just any of the flush jokers. But I mean, with Ancient Joker, it goes crazy. I had a build last night. I was playing Plasma deck. I had Smeared Joker, Blueprint, Ancient Joker, and then hit an Invisible Joker on my Ancient Joker. So I had 3 Ancient Jokers and Smeared Joker. I got to the final run. It was what is it? It's Verdant Leaf is the, I forget what the names are off the top of my head. It's the one where you have to sell a Joker to undebuff your cards. I needed to do that for my Ancient Joker, right? I fat fingered my or I clicked the wrong Joker, sold my Spear Joker, and lost my run because of it. It was so funny. Spear Joker, it's really solid if you're going for flush builds. It's just good. I mean, it's a powerful utility Joker. And funnily, I actually heard this from Raffle, actually. In one of Raffle's videos, like, it wasn't even related to Smear Joker or flushes. Someone in his chat was like, oh, I love Smear Joker with Checker deck. And Raffle's like, yeah, I do too. However, it's exactly the same as every other deck, which is really funny. Because, yeah, Smear Joker Checker deck and Smear Joker every other deck, there's functionally no difference, which is really funny, actually. Sixth Sense is one of those Jokers that, like, when you first see it ever, you're like, oh my god, it's so powerful. But then you play the game longer and longer, and you see more Spectral cards, and you, like, deal with Spectral cards, and you're like, wait a minute. This doesn't really do that much for me most of the time. Sixth Sense makes it so if your first played hand is exactly 1/6, it will be destroyed and create a random Spectral card. The problem is, random Spectral cards are pretty bad. The actual best use of Sixth Sense is to destroy the 6s in your deck, in my opinion. Yeah, you can make the argument that Sixth Sense is the best way to generate a Spectral card in your consumable slot outside of, like, Ghost deck, but saying something's the best when there's only 2 options and both options are pretty bad doesn't really mean much. That being said, though, if you do get cryptid from this and you do find a Perkio, that is really useful for high score runs, and you can do that, but in like a regular 8 ante, gold stake run, this is not the best Joker. It's not even remotely close. It's pretty bad, actually. Sock and Buskin re-triggers all face cards. Sock and Buskin's pretty interesting. It's like Hack, or like basically any re-trigger where it just works well with other Jokers, right? It works incredibly well with Tribule, or Smiley Face, or Photograph, etc. But it works really well with Lucky cards. And, I already talked about Lucky cards and how they work well with Hack, but Sock and Buskin, I mean, it's just Hack for face cards, right? Anything I said about Hack can really be said about, like, Sock and Buskin. Like, if there's Jokers that synergize with it, well, Sock's gonna be great. Tribule is a great example. And, yeah. I will say, though, typically, from what I've seen, if you are playing a Tribule build, you're probably playing with glass cards. If you are playing with glass cards, then, well, you're not playing with lucky cards, which means you can't get lucky cat value. That's just an observation I've made, but yeah. Space Joker has a 1 in 4 chance to upgrade played poker hand. The value of Space Joker is, like, actually pretty significant. It does matter what hand you're playing more, right? If you're playing 5 of kind, hey, Space Joker's probably really more valuable than, well, like, 2 pair, right? 2 pair doesn't scale very well, and guess what? 5 of kind does. Space Joker, it's another oops Joker. It's another one that loves to be oopsed, and it can, do pretty well. It's one of those Jokers that if you find it, you're really happy, and then you're like, okay, my Space Joker hasn't done anything in 8 hands, and you sell it, and you're like, dang, dude, Space Joker didn't do anything. Or you're like, oh my god, Space Jokers work every single hand, this is the best Joker ever. Because, hey, leveling up poker hands is very strong. There's a reason planets are super powerful. And while Space Joker doesn't scale Constellation or get put back into your Fool pool, it still does scale your poker hand, and that's pretty powerful. It's better than Burnt Joker for scaling, like, bigger hands, too, because Burnt Joker's, like, best for scaling, like, pairs or high card, or I guess technically it's really good for scaling 5 of a kind, because, well, if you have a full 5 of a kind deck, then you could probably discard a 5 of a kind. But, like, Space Joker is just more splashable. It's easier to get... It's easier to use with bigger hands than, you know, Burnt Joker, but it is a little worse, I think. However, I mean, Burnt Joker's a rare, Space Joker isn't. Makes sense. Steel Joker gives 0.2x molt per steel card in your deck. Steel cards are just powerful. You want to have a good amount of them typically when you're playing. And hey man, if you have like 20 steel cards, which is pretty achievable throughout a run, you'll have 5 times molt. That's just good. There's not really much to say about it. It's just a solid Joker. It's just solid. Like, I don't know what more to say. It's not the best Joker. It's not the best scaling Joker, but you're not upset when you see it, because, hey, it just says, okay, let's make some more steel cards, and that's solid. Steel cards are just good. I don't have really much more to say about it. It's just a solid Joker. Spare Trousers. Spare Trousers gives +2 molt when played hand contains a 2 pair. You can scale this with 2 pairs or 4 full houses pretty early and get some pretty good molt, right? But, like, 2 pair is a really bad hand to actually be playing for in the later game. And that means that the best way to make use of this Joker is to transition with it. Or, I guess, play full houses, which are a pretty decent hand. They're, you know, 40 times 4, which is pretty good. They scale pretty well. But if you are, like, trying to force 2 pair with Spare Trousers, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, I get that I was wrong, and, like, there are definitely a lot of situations where Spare Trousers is pretty good, right? And especially when you do consider the transition value of Spare Trousers, it can be pretty powerful. But I had people telling me that 2 pair is a good build to go for. It just isn't. It's just so bad. If you're playing for 2 pairs, you might as well start playing for Full House. I'm so serious. Scale's way better. You can get more cards out. You can play 5 cards, which is, you know, significant because it gives you more chips or more enhanced cards. I don't understand the people that were telling me about 2 pair builds, dude. Like, I get that I was wrong. Spare Trousers is a lot better than I thought it was. But jeez, dude, why are people trying to tell me to play that 2 pairs are a good hand? It's just not. Seance. So Seance is the other Joker, aside from Sixth Sense, that can generate you spectral cards in your, you know, consumable slot. And while that can be good, it's typically just not. Yeah, so you have to play a straight flush to create a spectral card with Seance. And, like, yeah, straight flush is a really good hand, but it's not easy to get. Usually, when you're trying to get a spectral card, it'll be in the earlier game, because, well, spectral cards are kind of better in early game, in my opinion. The only spectral card that's, like, better in the late game is, like, Ectoplasm, maybe. The rest of them, you'd rather have almost all of them really early. So, there's like a transition period where spectral cards become not as good at the same amount of time where you could probably get straight flushes consistently, and that's pretty awkward. It's just like it's not that great of a payoff for how hard it is to get, and like, I don't know, like, you're skipping spectral packs almost always, right? So hitting a spectral card, like, isn't that good. I don't know. I think that spectral cards need to be, like, reworked, in my opinion. It's just so bad. Most of them are just so terrible. You can't generate, like, soul from this either. If you could generate soul from Seance or Sixth Sense, then I think that the cards would be significantly better, right? Because hitting a random legendary would be a huge high roll. You can't do that. You can only find soul in packs, which sucks. Stone Joker gives plus 25 chips for each stone card in your deck. This is, like, has obvious synergy with, like, Marble Joker, and if you have 10 stone cards in your deck, it becomes equivalent to Stuntman, which is, like, pretty significant. 250 chips is, like, a good amount of chips, like, for a Joker to provide, and I mean, if you're playing, like, Plasma deck, having a bunch of stone cards can actually be pretty cool. Vampire does strip the stone from stone cards, so, like, there's, like, an obvious counter synergy there. However, I mean, Stone Joker, it's just solid. It's not like it's not the best Joker, you know. Typically, it's not going to help your run very much. But if you are like, hey, I desperately can't, I'm not finding like X molt, so I need to get more flat molt, or well, not flat molt, I need to get more chips, then hey, Stone Joker can definitely help. If I were to change anything about it, I'd probably make it give more chips though, because I think adding a lot of stone cards to your deck is typically a downside, and only getting 25 chips from it is pretty minor. Okay, so Throwback gives 0.25 X molt when you skip a blind. I've never taken this Joker in my entire life. I'm saying it right now. Never taken this Joker. I think skipping is bad. I think that at most you're skipping once, maybe twice in a run if you're actually trying to win. So why would you ever take Throwback? Look, people can fight me on this one. I still live on this hill that I think that skipping is bad and rarely ever useful. Maybe if you need to like get the reroll boss blind skip, yeah, it can be useful there. Or skipping on ante 1 round 1, right? The small blind. That's about it. I think that you should never skip otherwise. I really think that it's just bad. I think that you're losing money or losing out on shops. I think that's just not worth it. You're playing a shop simulator. Balatro is not a poker simulator. It's a shop simulator. You're spending a large amount of your time in your shop trying to maximize your money and maximize what you can actually get done while in the shop. So having less shops is just bad. Don't know what else, I don't know what to say. I think that I really think people are wrong. I think people are wrong that are telling me to skip more. I think they just, I really do. I really think they're wrong. Like, I'm so serious. I think you should only be skipping on that small blind unless you have these exact scenarios where you desperately need to reroll the boss blind. I don't know what else there could possibly be. I'm sorry. Idol gives ×2 molt to each scoring card that is the specified rank and suit. Idol takes a lot of deck fixing. It's no other card in the game, or no other Joker in the game takes this much deck fixing to get value out of. But when you do get it to work, it can be pretty good. Idol only checks for cards in your deck. So if you have exactly, say, all 10 of hearts and nothing else in your entire deck, it will always be 10 of heart. And then, well, that's amazing, right? It's ×2, 5 times, so 2 to the 5th. That's really strong. Before you even include any re-triggers, it's just good. It's a really solid Joker. It's hard to use, but if you do get it online, it's one of the best Jokers in the entire game. And that's fun. I like Jokers like that, like Idol, that are just super difficult to use, but give you so much value. It's super fun. Then there's Trading Card and To the Moon. Trading Card makes it so your first discard is exactly 1 card, it destroys it and gives you $3. This is the best deck fixing Joker in the game. I don't think that, I mean, that's not really a hot take. Nothing else really helps you even remotely as well as Trading Card, aside from, I guess, like 8-Ball and stuff like that. I don't know. That could technically help, but not really. Dude, deck fixing is powerful. It's super powerful. Getting your deck into a state where you're consistently hitting what poker hand you want, or consistently hitting, you know, what specific cards you want, specific face cards or number cards, etc., is super useful. The money that it gives you is not insignificant. I think that, like, I think I would still think this is a strong card, even if it didn't give you money. And the fact that it does, oh my lord, just really good card. And if you are, like, I mean, you do have to be careful, right? Because you do only have 2 discards and higher stakes. But if you're fixing your deck, the discards matter a lot less. So it's kind of like it's just a really positive card to be picking up. To the Moon gives $1 for $5 you have equal to your interest. So it, you know, just matches your interest. If you have seed money, it gets increased. If you have money tree, it gets increased even more, up to $20. This can be very good, right? There's a lot of scenarios where this is a really strong money generator. It's even, like, pretty good if you have no seed money, right? It's still, like, a solid money generator. It's not the best, right? $5 is better than Golden Joker, but it's solid. When you do get, like, seed money and money tree, it does go pretty ham, though. Do note, just like seed money and money tree, it's completely useless on green deck, which is really funny in my opinion. And last, but very certainly maybe least, we have Turtle Bean and Troubadour. Turtle Bean gives +5 hand size and loses 1 per round. Although it can be very powerful in the right scenarios if you, like, need it, I kinda just skip it. Like, yeah, it can be powerful in the right scenarios, but you can make that argument about every single Joker. And the amount of quote-unquote right scenarios for Turtle Bean isn't that high. Like, plus five hand size can be super powerful if you're like, hey, dude, I'm on ante 7, right? I can pick this up, and it will literally it will literally still give me hands by the time I get to my final boss. And that's fine, right? It's not amazing, but it's definitely fine. I think this is one of the worst food items, like, only a little bit better than ramen, but meh. It's just kind of a meh card. It doesn't really do that much. There's not really, you're not ever looking for it, to be honest. So it's just, yeah. Troubadour gives +2 hand size and -1 hand. This is just better than Bean. It doesn't get smaller. It's consistently +2 hand size. And, like, yeah, losing out on 1 hand can be a pretty big deal. But usually when you are in a spot where you want Troubadour, it's because, like, hey, I can pretty consistently, or I need to more consistently hit my hand that will win, and that 1 hand's going to win anyway, right? It makes it so you can hit, like, straights, flushes, 5 of a kind, etc., like flush house, flush 5, anything, right? More, easier, right? And, well, that just makes it a really powerful utility joker. There's a lot of jokers in this game that, like, provide a utility, and some of them are better than others. I think Troubadour is probably about the exact, like, medium. It's like a pretty mid, like, utility joker. It's not bad by any means, but it's not, like, an amazing one. I do have to say, I probably would rather take Juggler over Troubadour, even though Juggler just gives +1 hand size, and like, that's it. I would probably still take Juggler over Troubadour in a lot of situations, mainly because Juggler is cheaper, and, like, losing 1 hand is still losing $1. It still can add up on losing money, especially if you find Troubadour early and you're using it for a long time. You can just kind of screw your economy up with it. That being said, though, it's still pretty solid, and, like, if you have the scenarios where you want it, like, you're trying to make these, like, 5-card hands, and you're just more consistently, and you don't need more scoring, then it can just be pretty good. Anyway, that's gonna be it for me. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'd love to hear it. What do you guys think about jokers? I think for the most part, like, the vast majority of jokers in Balatro are pretty well designed. I've gone over every single one of them now, and like I said, I think most of them are pretty well designed. There are some real stinkers, and there's some that are really overpowered, like, and that's gonna happen in every game. But some, I don't think there's that many that are just, like, truly terribly designed. I think a lot of the food items are pretty badly designed, but that's also intentional, right? I don't know. Anyway, that's gonna be it for me. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. This is my longest, this is one of my longest videos I've ever done. So, yeah. My socials there on screen or down in the description. You can join my Discord. People are talking about Balatro. There's just the new update where people are, for the new Friends of Jimbo. I want to hear what your guys' favorite friend of Jimbo is. I'm really excited for the Bug Snacks one. I haven't played Balatro since the update came out, which was, like, earlier today, so I haven't equipped it yet, but that's going to be my new heart go-to is the Bug Snacks one. Anyway, I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.